The text came at 11:47 p.m., glowing across my phone screen while I sat cross-legged on the floor, tape clinging to my fingers, half-wrapped boxes stacked beside me. "You're not coming for Christmas. We just want family." I read it twice, then a third time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less brutal. The string lights on my tree flickered, soft and hollow against the silence of my apartment. I had spent hours choosing gifts, folding paper neatly, tying ribbons with care. Now the packages looked ridiculous, bright colors and perfect bows, waiting for a place I wasn't wanted. Not family. The word burned. I had cleared their overdue credit cards. I had wired thousands to keep their lights on when the bills piled too high. I had signed the final check that rescued their home from foreclosure, the house they were now decorating for a holiday I was excluded from. Every sacrifice had been swallowed in silence. No thanks, no acknowledgement, only the steady expectation that I would fix everything. I didn't reply. My hands shook, but I set the phone face down, pressed my palms against the carpet, and let the sting pass without a sound. If they wanted distance, I would give them silence. I didn't beg for a seat at their table, didn't fight for the scraps of affection they withheld. I only watched the lights of my small tree blur into a haze and realized that in their eyes, I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was the account that kept them afloat. The week moved like ice. No calls, no second messages, nothing but the steady stream of photos on social media. My parents arranging ornaments, my sister posting boomerangs of the family laughing around the same living room I had saved from being seized. I scrolled past each one with a steady face, even when my chest tightened. They wanted the appearance of family, curated smiles, and holiday cheer, with me carefully edited out of the frame. December 24th came, brittle and sharp. My apartment was quiet, no voices, no warmth, just the faint hum of the heater and the unopened gifts stacked like a mocking audience. I didn't dress up, didn't cook, didn't pour anything to drink. I simply waited. Because while they thought I had disappeared into silence, something else had been moving in the background. I had tied every payment to my name, every debt cleared under my account. And when I withdrew, the threads unraveled. At their house, the gathering was in full display. Laughter, chatter, the clinking of plates, the sound of wrapping paper tearing. My mother in her polished sweater, my father proud with his arm around her shoulders, my sister glowing under the lights. They thought the world was safe, secure, as if the foundation beneath them wasn't crumbling by design. The knock cut through the noise. Firm. Unexpected. My sister, closest to the door, pulled it open. Instead of me, instead of the cast-out daughter, it was the bank manager, papers in hand, voice clipped with authority. "The mortgage you believed was resolved," he began, eyes scanning the room of startled faces, "was directly tied to your child. The utilities, the debts, all managed under her accounts. As of today, all payments have been withdrawn. Effective immediately, this house is no longer yours." The words fell heavy, slicing through the holiday air. My mother's hand slipped from the glass she held, shards scattering on the rug. My father's expression drained, his jaw working soundlessly. My sister froze, whispering, What does that mean?" The silence after the announcement at their house was not brief. It stretched, heavy, pressing against every corner of the decorated room. The bank manager, efficient and unshaken, laid the documents on the coffee table that only hours earlier had held trays of cookies and bowls of festive candy. His tone was neutral, factual, the kind of voice that doesn't bend to begging. He explained line by line how every payment had been made under my accounts, how every signature belonged to me, how the record showed I had removed my involvement completely. Their safety net, their lifeline, had been cut. My father sat rigid, shoulders tight, face stripped of its usual authority. He searched for words, but every sentence began and broke apart before leaving his mouth. My mother tried to argue, insisting there had to be some mistake, but the papers didn't lie. Her voice trembled, desperate, until the manager interrupted with a simple truth. Nothing was theirs anymore. My sister's hands hovered in the air as if reaching for something to steady herself. She whispered questions no one answered. The decorated tree blinked behind them, mocking in its cheer, lights reflecting off ornaments that would soon be boxed away not for storage, but because they no longer had walls to hang inside. The gathering ended not with laughter, but with everyone sitting in stunned quiet, as if sound itself had been stolen from the house. Neighbors who had been invited for dessert left quickly, murmuring excuses, slipping out with glances that carried pity. My parents, who had always valued appearances more than truth, now sat exposed, stripped of the control they thought untouchable. By morning, word had spread. In towns like ours, news didn't wait. It traveled from porch to porch, post to post. My parents avoided calls, ignored knocks, tried to hold the crumbling walls together by silence. But silence didn't stop reality. The house was no longer theirs, and soon every belonging inside would follow. I didn't appear. I didn't call. I didn't write. I sat in my apartment, the small space that suddenly felt like power itself, watching everything unfold from a distance. Every decision had been precise. Every payment I had made had left a trail leading back to me. And when I withdrew, the system collapsed exactly as planned. For days, they scrambled. My father visited the bank in person, demanded explanations, pleaded for extensions. My mother wrote emails late into the night, her words clumsy, her sentences unraveling into fragments of desperation. My sister tried to speak sense, but she was met with snapping tones and broken tempers. They weren't prepared for the truth. They had relied on me for everything, and now without me, they were nothing. The house emptied faster than they expected. Notices arrived, contractors came to evaluate, movers circled with trucks ready to haul away what was once theirs. Each step was another cut into their pride. Their neighbors stopped waving, stopped making small talk, stopped pretending nothing had happened. The family they had so carefully polished for display was cracked, the damage visible from every angle. Still, I said nothing. I didn't step into their chaos, didn't offer a single hand, didn't show my face at the wreckage. My silence was louder than any argument could have been. By the end of the week, the house they had called home was gone. My parents and sister stood outside, belongings reduced to boxes, waiting for where to go next. Relatives refused to open their doors. Friends avoided involvement. Every person who once shared in their comfort now turned away, unwilling to carry the weight they had always expected me to hold alone. I knew where they went. A small rented apartment at the edge of town, nothing like the space they once flaunted, plain walls, thin carpets, barely room for the three of them. I knew because I checked. Quietly, without being seen, I made sure to watch them settle into a life stripped of privilege, stripped of the control they believed permanent. But this wasn't the end. It wasn't enough for them to lose what I had saved. They needed to understand why. They needed to feel the full weight of their words. We just want family. So, I prepared the next move. Not with shouting, not with confrontation, but with precision. I gathered every record, every transfer, every receipt, and placed them in a folder. It wasn't for them, it was for me. A reminder that their survival had been my doing, that their downfall was not an accident, but a choice. When January arrived, I sent one envelope. Not thick, not dramatic. Inside, only a single photo of their former house, lit beautifully at night, with a note that said, "You wanted family. You had one. You lost it." I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't care if they cried, screamed, or tore it into pieces. The message had been delivered. The next steps would happen without my hand pressing forward. Because the thing about losing stability is this: once it's gone, every decision after is tainted by fear. They would scramble for jobs they weren't qualified for. They would beg for help from people who no longer answered. They would argue among themselves, blaming one another for mistakes they never took responsibility for. And while they drowned in their own unraveling, I built quietly. My savings, untouched after withdrawing from their debts, grew. My apartment became more than just shelter. It became mine. My life, free from their demands, expanded. Each day felt sharper, clearer, because I had chosen it. The apartment they rented after losing the house was never enough. Thin walls, creaking floors, neighbors who shouted late at night, and a kitchen barely large enough to fit them all. My parents, once so careful about appearances, now avoided everyone. They pulled blinds closed, spoke in whispers, and lived in a space that carried the constant reminder that they had fallen. The distance between them grew tighter every day. My father tried to hold control, but every effort he made collapsed. He searched for work beyond his reach, rejected in every interview. His voice grew harsher at home, lashing out over small things, because he couldn't control the larger ones. My mother, once meticulous about order, now left dishes undone, clothes piled, her energy drained by disappointment. My sister, restless and angry, stopped trying to soothe either of them. She slipped out often, only to return late, face hardened, words short. The strain wasn't about the apartment. It was about what the apartment represented. The loss of their pride, their reputation, their stability. They couldn't speak of it openly, but everything they said circled back to the same truth. Without me, they had nothing. And admitting it out loud was something they could never bring themselves to do. I watched without stepping near. I learned their routines, not by spying in person, but through the quiet ways information travels in small towns. Rent late again. Utilities unpaid. Complaints from neighbors. Their lives were unraveling faster than they could stitch them back together. Months passed, each one colder than the last. My father's car broke down, repairs too costly to fix. My mother borrowed money from relatives who gave it once, but refused a second time. My sister dropped out of school, unable to focus on anything beyond the tension at home. The cracks widened until the shape of family they once clung to no longer resembled anything whole. I hadn't spoken to them since the night of the text. Not one call, not one word. But silence doesn't erase memory, and memory doesn't fade easily. They remembered what I had done, and more painfully, what I had undone. It was April when the letter came. Not a demand, not an apology. Just one sentence written in my mother's handwriting. We don't know what to do anymore. No greeting, no closing, just that. I read it once, folded it, and placed it in a drawer. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't acknowledgement. It was desperation without accountability. And that was the difference. They didn't want to understand what they had done to me. They only wanted rescue. Rescue was no longer mine to give. Spring turned into summer, and by then they had moved again. A smaller apartment this time, farther out, less maintained, more temporary. The decline was steady, irreversible. They were no longer the family who had once stood proudly in a decorated living room. They were shadows of it, surviving instead of living. The final step came without warning. My father left. One morning his things were gone. No explanation, no note. He disappeared, whether to another town, another life, or simply away from the burden he could no longer carry. My mother and sister were left behind, the silence heavier than before. That was when I decided to close the story. Not with another blow, not with more ruin. It had already reached its end. What remained was truth, and truth had to be spoken once, directly, to leave no doubt. I drove to their apartment on a quiet afternoon. I didn't knock at first. I stood outside, looking at the chipped paint, the broken step, the curtains drawn tight. Then I lifted my hand and tapped firmly. My mother answered. Her face was thinner, lines deeper, eyes tired. For a moment she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't expect I'd ever stand there again. My sister appeared behind her, shoulders stiff, eyes sharp but weary. I stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and stale air. Furniture mismatched, walls bare, the space heavy with silence. I didn't sit. I didn't remove my coat. I only looked at them and spoke. You told me I wasn't family. You told me you wanted Christmas without me. You said those words after I paid for everything you had. You made me nothing more than a wallet. And when I stopped, you lost it all. Not because of me, but because of how you treated me. Neither of them interrupted. My mother's hands trembled against the counter. My sister's gaze dropped to the floor. I didn't do this to punish you. I continued. I did it to let you see what life is without me holding it up. This is the life you chose when you cut me out. You wanted family without me. Now you have exactly that. Silence followed, thick and unbroken. No one spoke to defend themselves. No apology came. No acknowledgement of what had been done. Only quiet acceptance that nothing could be reversed. I turned toward the door. My mother called my name once, voice faint, but I didn't stop. My sister didn't speak at all. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and didn't look back. Driving away, I felt no triumph, no regret, only finality. The chapter had closed. They had lost everything not because of one decision, but because of years of choices that finally caught up to them. And I no longer carried their weight. My apartment was waiting, the lights warm, the space mine. I placed the letter back in the drawer, shut it, and let it stay there. A reminder of the line that ended it all.